What you're looking at used to be one of America's real power corridors. The 19th century version of a private club where wealth, industry, politics, and status all shared the same zip code. Back then, the river wasn't scenery. It was the interstate. It carried raw materials, finished goods, workers, ideas, and money. If you wanted to understand why certain families got rich, why certain towns grew into cities, and why entire regions rose and fell, you followed the water. Now cut to the present. You're watching places that once operated like financial engines sit quiet, some half empty, some hanging on, a few slowly reinventing themselves. And the contrast is almost offensive. In big metro areas, you're competing against hundreds of applicants to land a cramped studio for $3,000 a month, paying extra for a view of a brick wall and a laundry room that never works. Meanwhile, these riverfront towns, many of them with historic buildings, wide streets, real neighborhoods, and actual space, are sitting there like forgotten assets in a country that pretends it's out of room. These are the overlooked river towns, the ones people stopped mentioning when they talk about opportunity. Their economies didn't politely decline. A lot of them dropped hard, especially once the manufacturing era cracked. Shipping patterns shifted. Highways rerouted traffic away from downtowns. And corporate consolidation turned local employers into footnotes. Many of these towns hit the wall in the 1970s and never fully got up again. But here's the twist that matters in 2026. The punchline isn't on them anymore. It's on the big cities. Because while the national housing market feels like a rigged game, prices floating on speculation, rents propped up by scarcity narratives, entire neighborhoods turned into investment products. These river towns are living in a different reality. In a lot of them, rent didn't cool down. It collapsed, not because someone made it affordable, because demand vanished faster than supply. If you're looking for places in America where rent is low, homes are within reach, and daily life feels like it belongs to human beings instead of algorithms, you're in the right place. In this video, we're digging into ignored communities, hidden towns, affordable riverfront locations, where the cost of living still makes sense before everyone else decides it's trendy. And here's the deal. If you're serious about changing your life, you need to move like a man with a plan, not like someone doom-scrolling rent listings and hoping the market suddenly grows a conscience. The goal is breathing room, margin, options, the ability to save, invest, build skills, start something, recover from setbacks, and live without the constant pressure of one surprise expense and I'm done. So let's get into it, because these towns aren't just cheap. They're a lesson in how America actually works. They show you what happens when transportation changes, when industries relocate, when policy shifts, when corporate decisions wipe out local payrolls, and when a place gets left out of the modern attention economy. They also show you something important. When demand drops, the housing crisis disappears. Not everywhere, not equally, but enough to change what's possible for people willing to go off the main road. One quick reality check. Low rent doesn't automatically mean easy life. Cheap housing can come with trade-offs, limited jobs, older infrastructure, fewer services, less nightlife, and neighborhoods that vary dramatically block to block. Some towns are on the rise. Some are stable. Some are still struggling. The smartest move isn't to romanticize any of it. The smartest move is to understand the rules of the environment, then use them. Think of this like a chessboard. Big cities are crowded squares with high competition and high cost. River towns are quieter squares with less competition, but you need to know how to play there. All right, first stop, Cairo, Illinois. Cairo sits at a location that should have made it unstoppable, right where the Mississippi and Ohio rivers meet. On a map, it looks like destiny. Historically, it was. When river trade mattered, Cairo was a choke point. Goods moving north and south, east and west, passing through, add rail lines, warehouses, docks, and commerce that never slept. And you get a town that once pulsed with motion. Jobs weren't theoretical back then. They were physical, loading freight, working manufacturing, moving goods, repairing equipment, running the supply chain. Downtown had purpose. Buildings were built with confidence. The architecture still shows it. Brickwork, old facades, layouts designed for crowds. Then the bottom fell out. Factories closed, routes changed, industry consolidated, jobs evaporated. When payroll disappears, people don't drift away. They leave. Schools shrink, storefronts go dark, houses get abandoned. And once housing demand collapses, rent doesn't gently decline. It breaks. Today, Cairo is one of those places where rents can sound like typos, small units for numbers that wouldn't cover parking in a major city. Houses sitting empty because there simply aren't enough residents who need them. But Cairo isn't dead. It's quiet. There's a difference for the people who stayed, and for the rare outsiders who aren't afraid of rough edges. There's an opening. Living expenses are extremely low. If your income is remote, portable, or self-directed, you can buy yourself time here. Time to build a business. Time to get healthy. Time to pay off debt. Time to work on something that matters. And there are signs, small, scattered, real, of renewal. Artists reclaiming neglected buildings. Community groups maintaining parks and shared spaces. Small shops reopening. People refusing to let the story end as a punchline. Cairo is a harsh teacher. It shows you what happens when an economy disappears. But it also shows you what life looks like when rent pressure is gone. When your housing cost isn't eating your future. The game changes. You stop sprinting just to remain in place. You stop losing mental bandwidth to survival mode. And you can finally make moves instead of just making payments. Next stop, East Liverpool, Ohio, once known as the pottery capital of the United States. East Liverpool built its identity on ceramics, factories, and steady river commerce. For generations, it produced real goods that ended up in real American homes. That matters. Manufacturing towns weren't just jobs. They were ecosystems, apprenticeships, neighborhoods, union halls, diners, churches, small businesses that existed because the factories existed. Then the cycle hit. Production moved. Automation replaced headcount. Corporations consolidated. Plants shut down. People left. And the housing market did what it always does when people leave. It softened, it sagged, then collapsed. Today, East Liverpool is an affordability surprise that doesn't fit the national narrative. In certain pockets, you can still find rentals in the low hundreds, row houses, modest apartments, properties that would be snapped up instantly in a hot market. Sitting vacant here, but it's not a ghost town. It's a town that got quieter. There are pockets of energy, artists using cheap space, retirees stretching fixed incomes, remote workers who realize paying less for housing is the fastest raise you can give yourself. You'll see signs of revival, cafes, community spaces, restored streets. Not a boom. A slow return of oxygen. And what makes towns like this work is the social fabric. In smaller places, relationships still matter. People trade value directly. skills for rent reductions, labor for housing, informal networks helping each other get through. It's not glamorous, but it's real. East Liverpool is a reminder that opportunity isn't always a skyline. Sometimes it's a cheap roof and the time to rebuild your position. Next, Paducah, Kentucky. This one isn't a pure collapse story. It's an overlooked win. Paducah has history, riverfront charm, and a real arts presence. The Lowertown Arts District is one of the reasons people quietly move here. Renovated buildings, galleries, cafes, walkable streets. It's proof a town can have culture without luxury pricing. The numbers can still be surprising. Rentals in the mid-hundreds are still realistic in many cases. Renovated places often land below what big city renters pay for a closet. But the bigger point is balance. Affordability plus livability. Paducah works because it has structure, neighborhoods, community events, parks, a downtown with life in it. Enough services that you don't feel like you moved to the edge of the world. Trade-offs exist. Fewer corporate ladders, quieter nightlife, older infrastructure in some areas. But that's the equation. You don't come to Paducah to flex. You come to breathe. And breathing room is power. Low rent creates choices. Choices create stability. Stability creates momentum. Next, Madison, Indiana. Madison is different because it didn't die. It got skipped. In the 1800s, Madison was a major steamboat port on the Ohio River. Money flowed through. Merchants thrived. The town built with confidence. And you can still see it. Historic homes, brick storefronts, an intact layout built for permanence. Then railroads arrived and bypassed it. Trade routes changed and growth stopped, but Madison didn't crumble. It paused. Today, it's one of the most well-preserved 19th century communities in the country. Tree-lined streets, river views, neighborhoods that look expensive because they were built when craftsmanship mattered. And yet rent stayed grounded. No hype cycle, no waves of speculation, no mass influx of newcomers pushing prices into orbit. So you get a mismatch. High quality of place, lower cost of entry. Madison offers something a lot of men don't realize they're craving until they find it. Calm competence. A place that isn't trying to prove anything. A slower pace that makes focus easier. Jobs can be limited. Nightlife is quiet. Growth is restrained. But that restraint is why the town stayed human-sized and why the housing pressure never exploded. Next, Wheeling, West Virginia. Wheeling feels like a small city wearing the bones of a bigger one. It was once powerful enough to be West Virginia's first capital. Industry ran hot. Steel, glass, manufacturing, river trade. The city built. Infrastructure like it expected endless growth. Big buildings, bridges, theaters, warehouses. Then the industrial engine slowed. People left. Demand dropped. Rent followed. But Wheeling didn't fully hollow out. That's the key. It still has real urban structure. Walkable neighborhoods, historic districts, hospitals, colleges, cultural venues. Without urban rent, there are scars. Some neighborhoods show decades of stress. Job options can be limited unless you're in healthcare, education, trades, or working remotely. But low rent reduces risk. When housing is manageable, you can take smarter steps, build skills, start something on the side, stack savings, recover from setbacks without going under. That's why people move to places like Wheeling, not because it's fashionable, because it works. Next, Natchez, Mississippi. Natchez sits above the Mississippi like a town that refuses to stop being beautiful. Sweeping river views, historic Mansions, shaded streets, architecture that looks cinematic. It was once among the wealthiest places in America. Cotton money, river commerce, trade. Then opportunity moved. Housing demand faded. But Natchez held onto its biggest asset, character. What disappeared wasn't the scenery, it was the pressure. So you get a rare combination: elite visual appeal, lower housing costs. The place still looks expensive, but it isn't priced like it. Community here is deeply rooted. Church networks, heritage groups, local artists, families who've been there for generations. Life moves slower. That's reality. Jobs can be limited. Some seasons are quiet, but if your goal is stability, especially with remote income, Natchez can be a serious option. Give up speed, gain control. Next, Brownsville, Pennsylvania. Brownsville is extreme affordability, and you need to understand that before you romanticize it. It once mattered: shipbuilding, industrial, production feeding the steel machine, barges, foundries, constant work. Then steel collapsed, the economy disappeared, people moved away, and housing became almost unwanted. That's how you get prices that sound unreal. Some owners just want someone to occupy a property so it doesn't rot. It's not cheap because it's up and coming. It's cheap because demand is gone. But it's not empty. Families remain. Churches, small networks, people making it work through repairs, sharing space, negotiating, and community support. Trade-offs are serious: aging infrastructure, limited services, limited jobs. This is a reset town for the right person with a plan, and a trap for the wrong person without one. Next, Danville, Virginia. Danville sits in a category a lot of people ignore: a functioning small city where rent never detached from reality. It's along the Dan River near the North Carolina border, once powered by tobacco and manufacturing. Those industries declined and the pressure disappeared. But Danville retained structure: hospitals, schools, a real downtown, a growing river district. Rent is well below what you'd expect if you're coming from a metro life. And renters often have options, not desperation, choice. You get riverwalks, restaurants, markets, parks, trails, and community events. Not big city chaos, but steady livability. Downsides: fewer high-paying career tracks, some neighborhoods still recovering, smaller rental market. But as a base of operations, especially for remote work, trades, or small business, Danville can work. Next, Alton, Illinois. Alton tells a different story. Not collapse, overlooked stability. It had industry and shipping. When momentum shifted, people moved closer to larger metros. But the housing stayed. That surplus matters. So in 2026, you get Midwestern rents that stayed grounded: older brick buildings, historic houses, neighborhoods near the river with real space, no suburban markup, and the location helps: close to St. Louis for jobs and amenities, far enough to avoid St. Louis rent, not perfect. Some areas need reinvestment. Some properties are older. Growth is slow, but slow growth is why prices never ran away. Next, Vicksburg, Mississippi. Vicksburg feels like time slowed and stayed there. High bluffs above the Mississippi. A town built for more people than it has now. Historically, it was strategically vital. Control of Vicksburg meant control of the river. For a moment, it was at the center of American history. Then history moved on, but the physical city remains. Wide streets, old homes, brick commercial buildings. And because there's no boom cycle here, housing stays below national averages, often well below. Even in places with real character, The economy leans on government, healthcare, retirees, small business, and steady tourism. Stable, but not hype driven. Trade offs exist, limited. Job options, quiet pace, less nightlife. Specialized care can mean travel. But for the right person, remote workers, retirees, anyone escaping rent pressure, Vicksburg offers breathing room, not fantasy, control. Now step back. Here's what these towns reveal. America's housing crisis isn't universal. It's selective. It hits the crowded, the overhyped, the places where demand is driven by job concentration, cultural status, limited supply, and speculation. But it leaves pockets of opportunity in places that got bypassed by railroads, by highways, by corporate relocation, by demographic shifts, by the attention economy. These river towns once moved the country's goods and built its wealth. When the current shifted, they didn't disappear. They learned to exist without applause. And a place doesn't have to be trending to be livable. It has to match your mission. If your mission is building a stronger foundation, getting out of survival mode, paying down debt, stacking savings, funding a business, investing in skills, buying time, then affordability becomes strategy, not just a bonus. Think about it like this. Lower housing cost is a raise. If you cut rent from $3,000 to $800, you just freed up $2,200 a month. That's over $26,000 a year. That's not saving money. That's changing the direction of your life. Margin creates discipline. When you're not panicked about rent, you sleep better, train better, think clearer, make smarter decisions. Low competition creates leverage. In overheated cities, you have none. In quieter markets, you can negotiate, choose, and plan. But you can't outsource due diligence. You need to check neighborhoods, verify internet, inspect properties, understand healthcare access, know what you're trading away. And the safest way to use towns like this is simple. Bring your own opportunity, portable income, remote work, trades, online business, savings, a real plan. Because the story you've been sold, that you must live in a high-cost metro to have a real life, doesn't hold up everywhere. The country is full of empty rooms, unused buildings, affordable streets, places that would welcome serious people who move with intent. So if you've been feeling boxed in, like your life is being priced out from under you, understand this. There are still options. They just don't show up when you only look where everyone else is looking. And the moment everyone notices them, the advantage disappears. So move early, move smart, and move with a plan.